I recently scored a fantastic tent for 90 bucks when it retails new for $420. That is basically 80% off. This is the Mountain Hardwear Nimbus 2-person backpacking tent. It is an ultralight tent, weighs only 2 pounds 4 ounces with everything involved, and it should have cost way more than I paid for it. But I bought it used in nearly perfect condition. Let's dive into how you can do the same. First off, why even consider used tents? The biggest and most obvious reason is cost savings. If you can pay a whole lot less money than you normally would for a brand new tent, then this is a great benefit. And you really can often find lightly used, high quality tents in good condition. Another benefit that may not matter to everyone, but that is the environmental impact. By buying used gear, you're making more use of the materials that have already been produced and put out in the world. And we're not putting stuff in the landfill that might otherwise end up there. We're simply reducing waste by reusing gear. But another big benefit that I see to it is getting access to those higher end brands. A lot of times, brands like Mountain Hardwear just are out of reach for a lot of folks and their budgets. Even if I can, I tend to look for things on sale or cheaper because that's just the nature of who I am. Being able to get a product from a brand that you know, that you trust, that maybe you appreciate how they do business, is really nice when you can do it still at that affordable budget price point. I've also noticed a trend of overhyping of particular makes and models of tents. So what I've found is there are a lot of great options on models that aren't as well known or aren't as widely reviewed, like the Mountain Hardwear Nimbus. I couldn't find hardly any reviews online for this tent because when I saw it and I found that deal, I thought, well, I'd like to know something about this. So I Googled it, I looked on YouTube, but it was clear that this tent never got widespread coverage because its big brother, the Mountain Hardwear Stratos 2P, has tons of reviews. That tent is a little bit more money, it's a little bit bigger, it's a little bit better design, and it's only slightly heavier, so I can see why it's such an attractive tent. But because of that, the underdog that maybe is a little bit underwhelming for folks might be more readily available on clearance or on the used market. And I'm sure this is just one of many unwanted misfit tents that are out there that you can get a deal on. The way I scored this tent wasn't planned. I have been casually looking over the last several months for a nice, lightweight, 2-person backpacking tent that I would really just use for myself, because after having slept in a 1-person backpacking tent for the last couple of years on some trips, I'm of the opinion that 1 person really needs a 2-person tent to be comfy. So that's what I was looking for. So one day I'm at REI, I'm looking for something completely different, but I find myself wandering through the REI garage sale section. And if you're not familiar with that, what it is a section of returned items that they can't put back and sell as new. So they've already been used. Some of them are really worn ragged, some of them are broken, but they usually disclose as much as they know about it on a little ticket, and they say, this is for sale now at this price. All sales final, no returns. I see this tent sitting on the shelf. Then what I did is I started doing a little bit of research on my phone on the internet. As I looked at Mountain Hardwear's website, that's when I saw, wow, this is a $420 tent, and it's only listed here for less than 90 bucks. I also saw some reviews that were pretty good, nothing like amazing, but 4-point-something stars. Same thing on REI's website. Then I Google it, and I don't really find any written reviews, but all that kind of pointed me to thinking, this is all right. The downside, however, was it didn't tick all my boxes. It's a semi-freestanding tent, meaning it has that frame, but you do have to place at least 2 stakes for it to really rest taut. It's also a front entry tent. Now, I actually haven't owned a front entry tent, but I've just heard from a lot of other folks that they don't prefer them. So that's why I was really looking for a side entry tent. Because it's that spine, that triangle design, it's somewhat narrow inside when you're sitting up. 2 people could definitely not sit up at the same time, maybe if their heads are in the mesh, but I can sit up in there fine myself. Suffice it to say, it didn't check all the boxes of what I wanted, but the compromise of a few items in exchange for that awesome price was worth it to me. And that's where you might be able to find a good deal on a used tent too. By conceding on some nice to haves, I got my must haves, like the fact that it's super compact, it's super lightweight, and it's a 2-person tent that fits me, 1 person, comfortably, and it's a double wall tent. I had to give in on the fully freestanding thing, but semi-freestanding seemed like a reasonable compromise. Maybe the roof's not as wide as I would have liked, and I got a front door entry instead of a side entry. But at the end of the day, I got my must haves for 1/5 the price of a brand new tent of this caliber. As I mentioned, I've been casually looking for months, so I wasn't really serious about buying anything. And if I hadn't have found this deal, I wouldn't have walked out of REI with a tent that day. I was looking at brands like Featherstone and Nature Hike and One Tigress and Palmolive. You know, some of these well-reviewed, Chinese-based brands that are selling on Amazon where you can find a decent budget-friendly tint for between 100 and 150 bucks. But I ended up with this one for quite a bit cheaper, and this one is 2 pounds lighter than even the lightest of the tints I was looking at on Amazon. So for that reason alone, I was stoked at this find. But as you might imagine, being it is a used tint, I was concerned that maybe something was wrong with it. So here's what to look for when you're shopping for a used tint, and here's how you can inspect one when you think you found a good deal. I'm gonna show you exactly what I did when I was in REI inspecting this tint before I bought it. But I didn't set up the entire tint. So here's what I did. First things first, I actually Googled the thing, looked it up on the manufacturer's website, on Mountain Hardware's website, and I looked for a list of what should be in it. And then I confirmed that those things were in it. One thing REI does, by the way, anytime you get something out of the garage sale, is they'll mark every piece with a Sharpie. So now that it's got that silver X on it, there's no returning this thing. I pulled it out of the bag. I just kind of took the tent and I unraveled it. It's a little dirty, not bad at all though. I bet this was used once. Probably some guy bought it for a trip. Maybe he liked it, maybe he didn't, but he brought it back and decided, no, I just want my money back. Treat it as a tent rental maybe, I don't know. I just unfolded it neatly and I looked at every piece. So I was just looking closely at the fabric to see if I saw any obvious tears, anything along the seams. I was looking to see if that seam sealer was delaminating, if anything's peeling up or looks to be flaking away. But mainly I'm looking for tears. So I went over the whole thing pretty carefully. And on this one, I didn't notice anything. I unfolded it bit by bit, but I was in sort of a cramped space, so I couldn't unfold the whole thing and lay it out. And I was looking at all the mesh, didn't see anything wrong with the mesh. I tested all the zippers, both of them. That one works. It's got a two-way zipper. That one worked too. No issues there. Small tears wouldn't have scared me away. In general, I just flipped over, looked at all the different sides, and this tent looks super, super good. So that was my first sign. I'm like, oh man, I might have stumbled upon a pretty smoking deal. I did the same thing with the rainfly. It's a white rainfly, which some people don't like because gets dirty easy. You get the idea, but I did go through this whole thing. Same thing, opened the zippers, investigated the seams, made sure the little stake ties were all sewn in well, nothing was pulling apart, made sure the seams were sealed, wasn't delaminating or peeling or anything, and made sure there was no like powdery stuff. This one looked really good. One thing that's pretty nice that REI does on their garage sale items, or their return items, is they put on here a reason why it was returned. And in this case, and this is probably just whatever the person tells them, so it's not guaranteed to be comprehensive, but it said small crack in one of the pole segments. I think that was just an excuse for this guy to return the thing, and I'll show you why. First, I made sure they just went together okay. And sure enough, they did. Everything seemed to assemble fine. But then I got up close and personal. I came in and I looked at each pole by rotating that segment, and I was looking for any cracks. And I did that along the whole, each segment of the entire pole, since it said that was an issue. The pole ends were intact. It has these little nubbins that are kind of essential to the assembly, so they're there. Now I can't even find it. It was so minor. Oh, here it is. Maybe you can see it, maybe you can't. But right there, it looks like there might be a hairline crack just beginning. It's like it got a little too much tension on it at some point and that bent out. So that's sticking out just a hair, and there's barely, I don't know if you can even call it a crack yet, but something there. Whoop-de-doo. I think it's still gonna work fine even with that issue. So I'm just gonna use it as is and see if everything goes okay. If it doesn't, or if I see that crack start to expand, bummer, but fixable. In fact, it even has the piece I would need to fix that. The way these little repair segments are meant to work, they're a larger diameter than the pole itself, so you can just slide it over. I'd have to mess with that hook right there, but I'd work around that. But basically, you can put that over any segment that has a crack. So I could slide that all the way up here, or worst case scenario, I have to disassemble this pole a little bit once to get that segment right up here. But then I have a pole that's gonna work just fine. The other alternative would be that I just contact Mountain Hardware and I see if I can buy a replacement pole set. And there you have it, my $90 tent that's normally $420. Could have pitched it a little better there, but that'll do. By the way, it also came with the guy lines that were originally included, so it really wasn't missing anything. but I don't think I'm gonna need these tonight. If you have the opportunity to fully pitch the tent and inspect it that way, that's ideal. Don't let pitching it be a deal breaker though, because if it's not possible, it's just not possible, and you can still go through all the materials just in hand and make sure it's in decent condition like I did with this one. A few issues you might find that I would consider minor issues that are not deal breakers are things like it being dirty, there being some minor tears, or even a broken or bent pole, because there's a lot of ways to fix poles, and a tent pole issue might be an easy fix. Now, some major red flags that are a deal breaker for me are things like if the material is totally rotted out or degraded to a point where it's beyond repair. Now, in a nylon or in a polyester tent, that might mean that the waterproof coating has completely come off. You've got some major peeling, some major dusting and powdering of the material, or if it's really sticky, that's kind of a deal breaker to me because I just don't want to mess with that. I don't think I can trust that tent to keep me dry, and it's just kind of nasty. Now, here are a few things that might be a deal breaker, but they might also be an opportunity to negotiate and get an even better deal. And that's when there may be like some missing components. If it's still a current product, like I managed to find with this Mountain Hardwear Nimbus 2P, then you may be able to buy replacement parts. That's going to add to your cost, of course, but that's also something you might be able to negotiate on. So that would go for poles that are just missing or totally damaged. That could go for a rain fly. Stakes are a no-brainer. If there's no stakes, see if you can get it for a little cheaper, and you can buy cheap stakes all over the place. Same thing with any guy lines that you are expecting to be included, or bags. If those items are missing, I'm not worried. But if it's something major, I'm gonna investigate before I buy it. Here are a few tips for buying a used tent. First of all, you can shop at all kinds of places. Start by looking at REI. If you've got an REI nearby you can go look in the REI garage sale section. These are items that typically don't ever make it online. This is also where you can actually physically go into the store, see the stuff, and inspect it for yourself before you make the purchase. But once you do, all sales are final. Buying person-to-person online is a great option as well, and this is probably the most common one in our day and age. You've got Facebook Marketplace, of course, a lot of good deals to be found there. You've also got Craigslist if you're a little more old school. Then you've got eBay. A lot of people forget about eBay, but it's still one of the biggest online marketplaces in the world, and you can find some decent deals there. So not just Facebook Marketplace, but there's a lot of Facebook groups dedicated to buying and selling used gear, especially in specialized things like backpacking or camping. And a lot of folks are willing to ship across the country. Finally, a place worth mentioning is GearTrade. I've never personally purchased anything from GearTrade, but it seems like a decent outfit to me. It's an online marketplace, but for used gear. So if you even have used gear that you want to sell, you can send it into them. They appraise it, they list it, and they take a cut of it when it sells. But if you're shopping, you can buy used gear that's still in good shape, and they have a lot of high-end name brand gear. You're probably not gonna find the best prices. You're not gonna be able to negotiate, but you might still find something you're really happy with for a lot less than buying it new in the store. Now, when you are buying from private sellers, sometimes you run into a snafu. You're not always gonna find smoking deals because some people just are asking way too much money. So you're just gonna have to decide how much of a discount you want to make it worth your while. But what I look for is people that are already listing things for a reasonable price. Say it was a $500 tent and they listed it for $250. There is a respectful way to make a lowball offer on something like a used tent. They're asking $250. Let's say you want to pay $100. Here's how you could phrase it. Hey, I really like the tent you've got listed. I'm very interested. However, it's more than I was looking to spend. I would give you $100 for it. Now, I understand that that's quite a bit less than you were asking, but consider it a backup offer if nothing else works out. I'll pay cash, I can pick it up right away, and it'd be no hassle. Thanks for your consideration. Maybe they come back and say, you know what? I don't want to do 100, but if you can do 150, then we got a deal. Making an offer in this way respects the person, gives them an opportunity to not sell it to you, but you also have to be willing to walk away from it. You might do that 10 times before you get a deal, but I have gotten deals this way. It does work, and both parties can still be happy with it. Because at the end of the day, a lot of people just want to get rid of their stuff. They'd rather have some cash than another thing laying on the shelf. One last tip is that in the ideal situation, you would be able to find a tent that's only about 3 years old. Ideally, it's a tent that is still in production, just like I scored with this Mountain Hardwear Nimbus. That gives you the opportunity to get replacement parts or fix it up a little bit if it needs to be fixed up. By buying a currently produced model, you know that you still have a fairly long shelf life of use for that tent. Shop around, take your time, don't be in a hurry, and be willing to walk away. All those things will really help you find a great deal on a used tent. So next time you're in the market for a new tent, don't shy away from the used options. You might just find a gem like I did. And if you've ever found a great deal on a used tent, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear about it, and I'm sure everyone else would too. Now, if you want to see a really interesting trekking pole tent that I bought in France, then go watch this video next. Then gear up and get outside.